afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for coming and joining us as we discuss our journey through QM. I know that we have both a live audience and then some people who are also live but via webinar. So for our audience here, I'm just curious, how many of you are K-12? Great, yeah, good representation. How about higher ed? Okay, and we are coming from a K-12 perspective, but I think we all know that little humans, grown humans, young humans at heart, they're all humans, right? So we can learn from each other. Those of you watching us via webinar, if you could just type in the chat where you're from, so we could kind of get an idea of what locations are zooming in with us. We know that some of our Arkansas people are zooming in. Several of the virtual Arkansas teachers are supporting us. They are awesome in so many ways, and we appreciate them taking the end of their workday to come here. Do we have any other participants that you guys see in the chat?
Is this on? Yeah, we've got Albuquerque, Texas, North Dakota, Carrabba's Community College. There are 73 people on board, so a lot of Arkansas checking in, so that's good. South Texas.
Right. Thank you, everyone. Well, we're going to start by introducing ourselves, and I'll talk a little bit first about our organization. We are Virtual Arkansas. We are a supplemental program for the state of Arkansas public schools. We support public schools by helping with teacher shortage issues, offering students flexible learning opportunities online, helping schools expand their course offerings, particularly rural schools. We're a pretty rural state, and a majority of our learners come from that demographic. We have around 80 or more full-time teachers and 90 plus courses that help us accomplish this goal. We have a small administrative staff, so we're just 3 of the little pigs on that staff. And it's not lost on us that Arkansas is home to the Razorbacks, so you can kind of see our theme here that we have going on. Virtual Arkansas started in around 2013. It was actually a merger of other pioneering distance learning programs in the state that came together to keep improving the landscape. And so there were some particular hurdles there in growing a program with all of those different mindsets. I am Candice McPherson. I'm the course design coach. That title means a lot of things sometimes. I have a lot of different hats, but the main 3 things I do are design project management, quality control, and then resource implementation, helping instructors actually use various resources in the course. My background involves a decade in the brick and mortar classroom, junior high English, and then I got a master's in instructional technology and ended up in this world. I've been at Virtual Arkansas for 3 years now in this role or similar. And I'll pass it on to Paula. So I'll be speaking from a design perspective, and Paula will be speaking from an instructor perspective because she has a really solid background as an instructor.
I'm Paula McDougald. I am the course design specialist. I work hand in hand with Candice on a day-to-day basis. She and I are the design and development team, just the 2 of us. So as you can imagine, we wear a lot of hats and we do a lot of things besides just course design and development. My background, I spent about 5 years in a brick and mortar classroom and about 10 years teaching online. I have been with Virtual Arkansas since 2015. Last year, I worked part-time as a high school math teacher and part-time in this course design role, and this is my first year to be full-time out of the classroom and in the course design role.
I'm Kirsten Wilson. I'm the Director of Curriculum and Instruction with Virtual Arkansas, and I'm kind of the bridge between the course design and the instructional support and teachers. And this includes collaboration with our committees, our professional learning communities, timely professional development, utilizing formal and informal feedback from our partners, which includes facilitators, students, and our teachers, so that our end user experience is the best it can possibly be. I have a continuous focus on a viable aligned curriculum with literacy-rich experiences. And so that is my focus in all of the content areas. So all of our content areas include CTE, concurrent, and our core high school classes and our AP courses. So that creates a lot of dynamics that, helping everybody understand that we are all a team is something that I'm constantly working for in team building. So through that process, I call that a beautiful constraint, and within a beautiful constraint, that creates innovation. And so I'm always working towards effective learning. Before joining Virtual Arkansas, I'm in July of 2018. So while I am the Director of Curriculum Instruction, I am the baby when it comes to online learning. I spent 19 years in brick and mortar. And so in those 19 years, I've been a classroom teacher, both in the elementary and middle school. I've been an ELL instructor, an instructional technology integration coach, a curriculum coach, and a brick and mortar campus administrator. So my main goal in this viewpoint that we have, what my focus is how do I take the curriculum and the students and the instruction and bring them together to provide the best possible experience for our students.
And I'm very thankful to have Kirsten now because so much goes into just the design concept. It's really helpful to have someone truly focused on the curriculum piece, especially when it comes to policy and what ADE requires and making sure we're really supporting the needs of our districts. So today our topic involves our organization's journey toward quality and how others who've stood in roles before us, before we came up here, have journeyed through that as well. So you are all probably familiar with the story of the 3 little pigs, right? There are actually different variations. So one of the older variations, the pigs are told by their mother to go out and build their fortunes. And the first pig goes out and he makes a house of straw because he's lazy and doesn't really want to do a lot. And the second pig is kind of lazy, so he does sticks. And then the third pig is very diligent and puts a lot of ambition and effort and builds the house of bricks. Well, when the wolf comes through, which would represent life trials, I guess, things you face, the houses fall. And in the first version, the pigs actually get eaten and they die. So that's not where we're going with this. In some of the later versions that elementary school children are told, like the first little pig escapes and runs to the house of sticks. And then the 2 of them escape and run to the house of bricks. And I think of that as this implied collective experiential knowledge being passed down, sort of, And then in the 80s, late 80s, a version came out from the perspective of the wolf, where he was actually a neighbor asking for sugar so he could bake a cake for his grandma. And he had a cold and accidentally sneezed, and the house fell down, but it wasn't really his fault. And so we get the idea that maybe the wolf wasn't quite as evil as it seemed. But when we're talking about this, we're thinking about things that we see as the big bad wolf. And we're not trying to imply that these elements are evil or bad. They're just huffs and puffs that come up against and test our courses. And these can be parents, teachers, students, peer reviewers, quality matters, even law and policy affect our courses. And so we'll talk a little bit about how our structure is put to the test and what we've done with that. So the House of Straw represents our early years. These were very pioneering and reactionary years. I like to think of it as constantly putting out fires. Like you don't even have time to plan anything because everything's new and you're just trying to get something together. So I'll pass it on to Kirsten to talk a little bit about the background curriculum-wise on that.
So she tells you a little bit about the beginning in 2013, all these things merged together. Well, what she didn't tell you is in the course of about 2 months, we went from a CIV format to an online format and had to have courses ready to go for students. So basically, it's whatever we could grab and piece together. hence House of Straw. And so while there was a structure or alignment in place, it was probably more in name only than there was a depth to the alignment. And it wasn't done with a lot of fidelity or curriculum oversight. A lot was left to the instructors. We kind of planned as we went because we were kind of like, you know, moving through, and we were going just fast enough to be ahead of the learner. We were in survival mode to get that content out. There was no time for process or reflection, and we know that when there's not a timer for process or reflection, there can be lots of hiccups along the way. It lacked consistency, so a student could be in several different courses of ours, and the consistency with the delivery could be completely different depending on the course. And there was no dedicated time or attention given to curriculum and teacher learning because the supports were consumed with the operational side of just getting things up off the ground. So that's kind of where we were in this House of Straw.
So what did design look like at that time? Well, a lot of, yay, we got signed on with the LMS. Here's your empty course shell, build it. And here's some resources. And building out in front of students was happening, you know, like, oh, hurry and get the module built before the students get in there. Not a lot of time for mapping and planning. And that had some tough results for our students who came in and experienced that. Now, that being said, again, don't vilify that first pig necessarily because they're the pioneers and they're testing things, they're learning what works and what doesn't. And during the early days, I mean, the full potential of an LMS, I don't know, was fully realized in anybody's mind at that time. It was all very new. But a course ended up being a collection of lecture videos and hyperlinks. That was pretty much the first course.
So I came into Virtual Arkansas when it was in the throes of the House of Straw. I had taught online for quite a number of years prior to that for a very large organization that had lots and lots and lots of very well-paid course designers who built out these courses and just handed you this beautiful package and you just kind of learned how to navigate your way through it. Well, Virtual Arkansas was not that type of organization. We're a very small team, although we've grown quite a lot since I've been there. We had a very small team, and these were teachers who were doing their best to get through their day and manage to build course content ahead of their students, not people who were being paid millions of dollars to strictly do course design. So when I started, not only was there a lot of inconsistency from course to course, department to department, there was a lot of inconsistency within your own course. So within one lesson to another lesson in a module, within modules in the same semester or from one semester to the next of a course, there were just inconsistencies everywhere. There were errors upon errors upon errors. If you can imagine from a math teacher's perspective, math is a whole different language. You guys know that there are so many symbols and so many drawings and pictures and things that you just can't get from a regular keyboard. And so the number of errors that were in a math course would just absolutely astound you, to the point that you would end the day in tears because you'd had so many students finding issues that you just couldn't get to before they did. And so that time for us was not a time where we could really focus on ourselves growing professionally. We definitely could not focus on growing to the point that we were given 110% to our students to better our students and better their experience. Our time was spent putting out fires and just trying to stay ahead of the next catastrophe that was going to come up.
So along those lines, this time period not only was a house of straw, but it's been referred to in our history annals as the Wild Wild West. And so, you know, just like we had the Wild Wild West, and that was an important time in history of our country, and how we have created standards and things since then. It's the same approach as we move forward. And so we wanted to kind of throw it out here to you guys for a discussion of what questions you may have for us, like in this period of quality. And can you share about your House of Straw days? Or if you're currently in them, do you have questions about what that is? And we're admitting that we were in this, so there's no shame in the game to be here. So, and we're proud of the fact that we were there and we are getting to where we are, because you have to start somewhere. So if there's questions or anybody want to make any comments at this point. And I may preface this is discussion led. So we have times that we will be stopping to allow for discussion, and also for those that are joining us via webinar, that they can ask questions as well. Yes.
Okay.
During our House of Straw Day, somebody printed out a sheet from our economics course where we were talking about covering your assets. They had sent it to the State Department of Education, the superintendent, and it came back to us asking us why we left out the T.
Oh. Tough story.
That's a good story.
That one over here.
Clearly, proofreading is an important part of House of Straw.
I'm sure there were some errors like that. I wasn't there in that day, so I don't have any recollection.
When you were in the House of Straw years, and as an instructor or course designer, when you found errors within the course content, how did you as the instructor manage that, and how did you deal with students who may have worked through that already, have worked through that point in the course, or aren't there, or are asking questions? What was your strategy to resolve those course errors that you found in the early years?
That's a great question. There was a lot of reteaching that was done, especially from a math perspective. Again, I'm a math person. I can't really speak so much to the other subject areas, but there was a lot of reteaching that was done on our part. There was a lot of late night videos that were recorded where we may have looked like a hot mess if our camera was on, but we kept it off because it was midnight and it was, you know, finally to a point in our day that we could record something and put out there to make sure that students understood this is what the process should look like. There were a lot of additional announcements, a lot of additional supports that we would have to create on our own and just stick in there to not only address errors that we found, but also to address just missing pieces. Things that just were not covered in the content that should have been covered, kind of some building blocks that just were not in place that students needed.
From the design perspective, there was a lot of crying.
From the teacher's perspective.
I was not there, but I knew the person who was. And so depending on which course, if it was a really highly enrolled course, there was like a master and several copies. And so you aren't just fixing it in one place, you're fixing it in multiple places. And another service we provide for our state is content only. So schools can use our content with their teacher in their classroom in kind of a blended method. And so then being able to pass that along to that group of people. And so it really told us, we knew in the straw days, okay, we've got to do something, you know, what can we do? Which kind of led us into our sticks days. So the House of Sticks is similar to the House of Straw. We're still putting out fires everywhere, but we're really trying to reinforce and start to build structures that could possibly last. It's lots of ideas, maybe not lots of tangible pieces. So I'll pass that on to you to start.
So at this point, and you guys have probably heard this before, but there was pockets of excellence, but it wasn't consistent throughout our organization. There were alignment in places, especially if there were teachers that valued the alignment, then the alignment was there. But if the value for the alignment piece wasn't something that the instructor was beholden to, then you might not see that alignment piece there. The instructors were still creating the courses and working with the courses. So not all of the courses were built in a way that was with fidelity in result of alignment and assessments and considering the end user. We designed on the basis of the INACOL standards because we weren't familiar with QM at that time. And so we took pieces of things and kind of pieced them together and tried to start implementing some sort of standard internally within our organization. The teachers at that point, we started to do some professional development. We had trained them on backwards design, but there was no time to allow for the teachers to really understand the depth behind it. And it was more what we need you to do, not the why behind it. So there were a lot of people with everything going on. It didn't stick. And so, there was that part. And then there was some shift at this point with administrative support where there was more focus on teaching and learning. And the vision was reformulated for our organization with more focus on teacher quality and course quality. But that person was wearing several different hats. And so they were taking care of finances, they were taking care of other organizational needs. They were interacting with policy and the DOE and things like that. And then they also were doing teacher professional development and looking at curriculum. So there wasn't the intention or focus that it needed because there were too many responsibilities. But we were starting to recognize within our organization there was a need for a dedicated C&I person at that point.
Design-wise, we made some changes to the LMS. We're like, okay, let's self-host so we have more control. And then, so we migrated to a self-hosted Moodle platform. We actually started using a template and specific contracts with subject matter experts to design the content, and there were phases to that. They were kind of looser phases, but at least we had phases, right? It's better than the straw. And what that ended up, there were fruits from that, but that ended up bringing us to kind of a Band-Aid. We still had half our courses in the old LMS, we had half our courses in the new one, and the idea of QM started to be introduced to us at this point, but we weren't really in a place where we could grab onto it.
So the House of Sticks started to bring some relief to teachers. Teachers could kind of take a little sigh, breathe a little bit, because there were some improvements that were being made. There were some consistencies that were starting to happen within courses because of the templates that were being put in place. There were more consistencies within departments, especially, maybe not from department to department, but within math, within English, within history, whatever, you would start to see more similarities with your courses. This was also a time where accessibility was really started to be addressed. Definitely not to the scale that it needed to be, but that was a topic that was coming into focus for us. This was also a time where Candice mentioned that some templates were put into place. That helped the process, definitely, but it was still not quite refined to the point that it needed to be for us to really be able to see a cross-curricular consistency in the courses.
And just to give another example, in the case of alignment, so like we knew we wanted backwards design, but the way that ended up in the hands of the designers are, okay, build your assessments, phase 1. There wasn't a whole lot of training around the why behind it. It was just kind of like a quick, because everybody's in rush mode, we're still in that fire mode. And then we realized, okay, if we're really gonna make a house of bricks, number 1, we have to stop being in this reactionary mode. And number 2, we need help. So we need an ally, we need supports. And that kind of led us to our next phase. But first we wanna know about your House of Sticks, and I'll pass it on to you.
Yeah. Just what parts of your program have you noticed improvement? If you've kind of been in this transition, like you've gone from straw to sticks, what do you see in your program that has improved, but maybe still reflects a House of Sticks? And what questions do you have about living in the House of Sticks and moving forward? Because I stepped into this organization as we were putting the finishing touches on a House of Bricks. So I have got to live in the nice house. I am the entitled millennial, for lack of a better term. Yeah, I'm picking on Candice, but that I'm getting to live in the benefits of what happened with the House of Straw and the House of Sticks, and it doesn't escape my my view of what happened to get us there, and the appreciation for the hard work and the tears and the sweat that went into it so that we could be where we are today. So what, back here? And online, if you have questions or comments, please add too.
Thank you so much for that. I'm sorry, I'm losing my voice. But my question is, we have, if I speak specifically about my university, we have several houses of bricks across our campus. And then we have some sticks and we have some straws, especially as it relates to accessibility. And so we are, and I would assume that this is a similar scenario in many of our institutions, both higher ed and K-12, you know, just trying to find out how we can continue to use a variety of resources and be creative when we understand, you know, that funding doesn't always flow freely, but there's still that not only a mandate, but also a desire to make sure that our content is accessible. And so in the higher ed space, it would be very helpful to understand what's happening in K-12 with our learners who are engaging in online learning, but who have IEPs.
Mm-hmm. So there are a few different things that we do. We design our LMSs where the kids are grouped by certain testing groups because of their IEPs. We have embedded in our courses Read Speaker, so that those that, you know, have things read, that would have text read to them or audible text, have access to that.
From the design point, a lot of training, and when it comes to the instructors, we had to create a simulation to try to help them step into the perspective of the student. So even though ours was pretty basic, and we actually designed a course, so anyone who's building courses for us have to take this course. You guys probably have something similar yourselves, but one of the modules has a lesson where the text is like white against white, so you can't see the text and you have to use a screen reader to hear it. And so it's kind of a poorly designed page. And so they use the screen reader, and then when they're done, there's a discussion to debrief, and it just asks them to think about what was wrong with that page, how could it have been designed differently. It was from an English class, and it was using color to convey meaning. It was using bold, and the video didn't have a transcript. And so really great discussions came out of that. And I think that was a big turning point for us. One thing that helped me is we attended a MOOC, and I can't remember the name of it right now, but I will try to remember and post it for you guys. But the instructor in that MOOC, one of the instructors was blind himself, and it was just very well put together, and a lot of examples from the perspective of a learner who would need those types of modifications. But one thing he said to me when I was kind of panicking, like, how in the world are we gonna fix this in 90 courses right now, you know? And he's like, you're not gonna fix it all at one time. What you do is you continually implement strategies to make every course you're building now better, and over time your systems will improve. You can't try to do it in one fell swoop or try to, you know, batter people into doing it, but it is a law and it is required. We have a strong relationship too with Arkansas School for the Blind and Deaf. Some of their students take our courses and they are phenomenal and give us a lot of great feedback too. So if you can ally with any organizations in your state that can maybe come in, maybe put some students up on a panel and let them talk about how they experience the course and how they learn.
It's powerful.
I would also encourage you to reach out to your Department of Ed and your SPED program through your Department of Ed, because that would be a great resource as well. And then something that we do is we are moving towards this, and I'll talk to this a little bit later, but we're moving to where we're doing cross-curricular walkthroughs through each other's courses. And so if you've got departments that are House of Bricks, maybe the House of Bricks, they don't know who's the House of Bricks or who's the House of Sticks or whatever, but if they're doing peer reviews of cross-curricular rather than within the department, where you set some norms, maybe of just them walking through each other's courses to learn, not to necessarily critique, that might be a way to kind of create some opportunity for learning between your different instructors and the courses they have.
Do we have any questions from our webinar folks?
There was one. Could you share how you build your training?
So that segues well into the House of Bricks. So I'll let you talk a little bit about that, and I'll be sure to show you some examples of our training process.
Okay. So we couldn't really move beyond the House of Six until we gained some allies through the VLLA group, the Virtual Leadership Learning Alliance, and which is a group of other virtual schools. There's about 15 of them, and we call them pigs like us. This led us to Quality Matters. It was through VLLA that we were introduced to Quality Matters, and understanding that QM was a good wolf. He was the one with the cold just wanting sugar, and would challenge our structures, but also be our ally. We had our collective history experience with VLLA, along with the structures of QM that helped with our brick design. And we used the huff and puff of the QM wolf standards that ensured our courses would stand up against any other huffy puffy wolf out there. So with that, moving into our House of Bricks, I already said that I got to walk into the House of Bricks. I wasn't there for the House of Straw, House of Sticks. Part of building that House of Bricks, they hired a director of curriculum and instruction, and that would be me. Before I came along, that position did not exist in Virtual Arkansas. So we have a dedicated person now that focuses on curriculum and instruction through the lens of what the teachers and the students need, and I partner with our course designers. With our alignment, we revisited the backwards design, this time rolling it out from the why instead of what, and really understanding the depth of that and talking in depth about what does the standard say, at what depth of knowledge is it represented, how is it taught through the course, and how are we assessing it, and is our assessment as strong as the standard or stronger, and is the instruction that we're providing at a high enough level that when students get to the assessment, they can be successful. So backwards design was given a lot more meaning than build your assessments, then build everything else. So that was a huge part of that. And I'm a wholes apart learner. And so when I present these things, I'm always thinking big picture. And so I think that was easy for me to present, whereas before it was part to whole. And some teachers never got to the whole part of why we do backwards design. So that's really important for your teachers to understand that. I'm sure we've all been in a situation where we've been told something to do and we don't understand the why, and we do it out of compliance. Teachers understanding the why, especially in an online environment, is critical, because the implementation is so important, because there's such a finesse to online learning that brick and mortar, you can kind of glaze over it sometimes, I think. But in online learning, if it's only done with compliance and not intention, it's really evident. We also worked with statewide curriculum initiatives that were incorporated into instructional practices and courses. We are utilizing high reliability schools through those surveys and ways to improve our process. That's also something our brick and mortar are doing, so we're doing that in partnership with them. As we mentioned before, we're not a diploma granting institution, we partner with schools, so it's really important that whatever we do mirrors what's happening in the state of Arkansas on our brick and mortar. And so we try to align with that, as well as what we do with Quality Matters. We also have focused on some of the aspects of the book Focus by Mike Schmoker. And in that, and I would tell you to read that with a grain of salt if you read the book. But there are some pieces that I took away from that. And those pieces that we're working on right now is to have an aligned, viable curriculum across all content areas. The other piece is the quality instructional practices that have high yield for student learning. And then the authentic literacy, where our students are reading, writing, and speaking in every single content area with great depth. The other key thing that we're working on is the PLCs, and through our PLCs, which I call our PLC, the entire organization, we have collaborative teams. We have what are called our What If Fridays, which are intervention Fridays, where we focus on interventions both with our facilitators that work with our teachers and our students, and then interventions with specifically with our students. And then in addition to that, we have committees, and those committees include our intervention committee, our innovation committee, and our quality assurance committee that feed right back into our QM process. In addition to that, we focus on connection and collaboration. There's shared ownership and responsibility of our courses. Our teachers are evaluated, and part of their evaluation is how do they own the course and give feedback, because we have a continuous process that I think you're going to talk about. Mm-hmm. Yes. And then we have new updated the NSQ standards provided with the partnership with QM and VLLA that we're looking into. With that QM, we have key people initially that we put into the QM process, not this last summer, but the summer before, and then that spring before. And then we started internal reviews last year. This past summer, we put half of our teachers through the QM rubric process, and this following summer, we'll put the other half of our teachers, so that our entire organization will have been through the QM K-12 rubric process, so that they have that lens as they're looking at their courses. And then in addition to that, we have taken the NSQ for teachers and for courses, and we are aligning that with our state standards, our Charlotte Danielson teacher review that we do for a teacher assessment, and then also how that aligns to QM standards as well. So that's kind of where our House of Bricks is right now in regards to curriculum.
And with putting those individuals in the K-12 rubric training, we chose to actually have them take it through QM rather than us. Number one, because I mean, we're a small group of people, so anything we can kind of hand off is, you know, positive. And we wanted them to interact with other online educators, and thought that that was a really powerful piece for them. So even if you are doing it kind of homegrown in your institution, also try to think of ways to connect your instructors with those outside also doing QM to collaborate, because that has some powerful elements to it. But one of the big things is we had to capture all these processes, all these ideas, all these things we knew we needed to do. And as we went to the conferences with the VLLA, and we come places like this and we hear these great ideas, they would just flit off if we didn't put them in some tangible form and pass that on to our instructors. So we actually created what's called the Teacher Gateway, and it's a Google site. And it's only accessible to our instructors and other admins, but I can share pieces, or I would even, like, if you email me, I might be able to give you access. I'll have to confirm with our director. He's watching right now, so. Anyway, the Teacher Gateway has basically any resource a teacher would need. So after we do a PD, or if we bring something back from a conference like this, we put it in here and we organize it. We also have our own policies in here. It's a great onboarding tool when we get a new person, because sometimes those ideas that you've trained everybody on, well, now here are these new people, they've never heard it before. And so you have like a mix of people who understand a concept and who don't. So we have a section for our LMS, a section for instruction, and it's pretty expansive. It explains our vision, who we are as an organization, and just a variety of things. When it comes to the committees, a big purpose there is buy-in for teachers. Our teachers are on those committees, and they help drive the decisions because we want them to have buy-in, so they lead some of those committees. But for the design and development piece, to the question that came earlier, so In the course itself, we created modules that would actually help a person build their first module in a course. So each assignment is set up. Module 1 is introductory elements, talking about accessibility, giving that simulation, discussing best practice in design. And then they do the planning piece with alignment. And we keep some of that here so they can refer back to that. We have actually ended up, we don't have one person doing it anymore. We have a team of at least 2. So we have a SME, which is one of our teachers, and we have another also instructor who's not a subject matter expert who builds it. So the SME just puts it in a Google Doc template that we have. They don't have to worry about the quirks of the LMS and how to do this or that. Our developer focuses on that piece for them. And also that developer functions kind of as a proofreader. And if that person as an adult can't understand what's going on over here, then you know, the student probably won't understand it either. So they can work as a team in that way. But so our phases are in 5 parts, and these kind of mirror the modules in the course. First is framework alignment. And so we talk a little bit about how to find your frameworks in our K-12 case, In our K-12 case, we have frameworks kind of handed to us by our state. In a higher ed situation, this would be the syllabus section, you know, what are your objectives and where are they gonna guide you? And then AP Central for our AP courses. We tell them to get a vision for their course. We talk about measurable objectives and blooms and a lot of those key pedagogical steps that go into it. And then they kind of storyboard it out and create an outline. After that, they start gathering their resources. And this is where we really emphasize copyright in this module. And we emphasize accessibility again. And we talk about third-party linking because, you know, Murphy's Law, if you link to a great website, it's going to go down right when the students are going to that module. So make sure that you really want to link to that and you don't make it an essential part. We talk about citations. Believe it or not, that's a big challenge for us, okay? So yes, maybe it's OER, but you need to cite what you do. And if it's Creative Commons, you know, use that format. If it's a fair use type scholarly academic citation, make sure you're doing that. And sometimes you have to retrain on that. We have a whole guide for embedding text and media accessibly, so they can refer to that. And then I'll show you step 3, the scripting. So this is an example of a scripting document that guides them through an entire module. And this, we use QM to create this document, and we tell them that. And we also say, this is not like the only thing you can do. This is your starting point, and if you want to change this template, please, let's change it, but let's discuss it because there are things in here for a reason. And so we can make sure that we don't change something that would make things hard for your learners because, you know, we drop this or that. So at this point, we've finally submitted courses. We started an internal review process. We submitted courses. We got our first 2 QM approved like 2 weeks ago. And so we finally feel like we have the house of bricks going. And from a teacher perspective, I know things probably have improved in the house of bricks time too.
From a teacher's perspective, now teachers are able to really proactively focus on their students. We're out of that just complete reactionary phase that we've been in for a while. And now we can really start looking at what's going to make things better for students, not just how we can put out this fire or fix this problem. What can we do to make this better, make it more engaging for students? Along the same lines, teachers now have a little more time in their day, hopefully, and they're able to think about how they can make themselves better also. What can they do to further their knowledge of resources or instructional methods? How can they look further into growing as an online teacher to benefit their students? So it's already been mentioned that by the summer of 2020, all of our teachers, so around 80 of them, will have gone through the K-12 rubric training. That makes a huge impact on our organization. It makes a huge impact just for teachers to really understand what it is that we're saying when we say we're trying to get through the QM process. We're trying to align with the QM rubric. If they don't even know what that rubric is, then they definitely have some problems as far as the understanding is concerned. It was also mentioned that we have a quality committee. So that committee last year spent some time looking at what we call the best of courses. So in those best of the best from each of our departments, what could we pull and use as standards for other courses? And that was in alignment with the QM rubric. So we knew for sure what we were pulling as what we thought was the best really was the best to be able to drive courses moving forward.
I know we've got to have some veterans in this room right now with House of Bricks and those watching. So please share, you know, what do you do to keep your House of Bricks standing up? Do you have anything similar to this that really gives you traction and support for implementing quality learning for your students?
No problem. So as I mentioned earlier, we do have some houses of bricks at our university. And one of the things we do is that we are very intentional about making sure that the conversation is continuing in the different areas where we are. We have a rather large institution, but we have a small office that supports them as it relates to digital learning, course design, and delivery. And so what has been critical in maintaining our House of Bricks, I guess, is to have our own, what we would call liaisons, I guess, in the different disciplines that kind of help support making sure there are continuous inspectors of the house that make sure that the elements, you know, keep going. So they are trained in quality matters. They are high flyers. They are the ones that engage in the peer review process that we can then rely on to help us scale what we're doing and to keep that conversation going. So they help us maintain our houses.
That's great. Yeah, having those instructors and key players to buy in also is so important.
And that's part of when I came in, one of the things is really focusing on teacher leadership. When we do our professional learning, if you notice, I said timely professional learning. A lot of when I see that there is a shining example of that, and Paula's example of that last year, I saw how she was doing some great time management with her course and some things that she was doing. I asked her to come in and share with our teachers just a brief 5-minute kind of mini PD about what she was doing, and we captured it on video so that teachers could go back and look at it. And it was a game changer for some of our teachers who just had not thought of doing something that way. And so I rely a lot on the teacher leadership, and you all that are administrators know you can say it until you're blue in the face and it kind of falls on deaf ears, but you have one of the teacher peers, one of their peers say it, and it's, you know, it's the gold standard. And it's because they're in it together and they trust one another because they're in the same place together. And I will defer to my teachers all day long when it comes to professional learning because they're in it and they understand it and they can provide that real professional learning that teachers value.
Being an ally is so important. Like, I'm not a taskmaster as a design coach. I am your ally. I'm like, what if I told you I could save you 50 emails from students if you changed this, you know? So we'll go ahead and close. I think we've got 1 minute left.
Okay. So the moral of the story is that you don't have to go through the implosion and struggles of a house of straw or a house of sticks, stick years, much like we did, because there's plenty of pigs like us that have been there and that can help you out. And we've been there before. QM offers a packaged, vetted collective knowledge from these pigs of us that have been through it together that gives you a plan for more solid structure or the bricks. Avoid creating the situation where your students or other stakeholders take on the role of the wolf in testing your courses, but let QM be your huffing and puffing wolf. Let QM be your ally. Or as the recent Gatorade commercial says, make your rival your fuel. Your rival, QM, is the fuel that moves you forward to quality.
If I could give an athlete one piece of advice, it'd be to find a rival. Someone committed to taking you down.
And then we had to feel like boom.
They should scare you
All day like boom. All night like boom.
into starting early
To feel like boom.
and staying late.
It's like boom.
They might be far away or across town. They might be family, but they should make you obsessed. Like this time it's personal obsessed. And they'll bring you pain and frustration. You will hate them, but then you'll respect them and love them. Because that rival that wants to take you down is going to make you raise your game even higher.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.